Welcome to the San Luis Obispo Railroad Museum. It's February 20, 2015. My name's Glenn Madison. Today I'm talking with Bill Berry and Virlon Smoot, and Tom Mitchell is our videographer. So, gentlemen, this is your chance to reminisce. Tell us about when you worked here, what you did, and some of the wild and crazy things that happened.
You want to start?
No, go ahead.
I'm 67. I originally hired out with Southern Pacific in 1966. When I was 18, I lived in Orange County. My buddy's dad said, hey, you want a summer job? And he was high up in the union. He was a switchman, and more on that later. And so back in those days, SP had they needed bodies during the summer. They'd hire a lot of college students. Claim to fame back in the day, O.J. Simpson worked for them during the summer. Several college kids, and then they'd quit and come back. Well, I got a job as a switchman, but I didn't quit. And what turned out to be supposed to be a summer job turned into a long summer. And I worked for 24 years. I worked down in Los Angeles until '82 as a switchman, and then moved up to San Luis Obispo in '82, and then brakeman, and eventually finally got my conductor's rights, I think, in the mid to late '80s. And then in 1990, I quit. I took the buyout and became an associate pastor. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
My name's Roland Smoot. I hired out in Los Angeles in February of 1966 on the Southern Pacific. My very first trip after my student trips was on the Saugus Local, and after we tied up on that, about 9 hours later, I got called to go protect a Pacific Electric job at Butte Street, which was the PE's main yard, which I did, and I stayed on the PE for about 10 and a half years until I moved to San Luis Obispo in late 1976. And I came up here, and I was promoted to conductor in 1971, and worked for almost 40 years. After I retired in 2005, around 2009, Rob Himoto, president of the Santa Maria Valley Railroad, he needed a brakeman or conductor for just temporary, once or twice a week, so I went down and helped him out, and then about a year later, I became an engineer for him for about a year, and then I figured enough was enough, so I just didn't do any more. So now I'm into 7.5-inch gauge railroading out at Bitter Creek.
Yeah, which is great. It's a great place out there, I'm telling you. It really is nice.
San Luis Obispo, I know Bill and I both worked from San Luis Obispo to Watsonville. We both worked from San Luis to Los Angeles, which we call the dark side because most of the jobs were at night. Bill and I both worked Guadalupe, Lompoc. We worked both those terminals together quite a bit.
Yeah, we did.
In fact, we were down in Lompoc one day, and Bill, being a switchman,
now,
switchman's
you have a Bible
motto
that he can swear on, because part of this might be exaggerated.
No, it's not exaggerated, because the switchman's motto is don't run when you can walk, don't walk when you can sit down, and don't sit down when you can lay down. And of course, a brakeman, their wheels are spinning all the time, trying to get the work done, and when always worked 7.5 to 8 hours a day, period. They didn't get big breaks like we did. So I started calling Bill Lead Legs because he was the slowest person I've ever seen in my life. And unbelievably, the name is stuck. A lot of people still call him Lead Legs.
They do. I have several words and terms for him, but I'm not going to use them. But yeah, it was great. He did. He helped me out because two different worlds, switching and braking, especially in the road switchers and the locals and things like that. Two different worlds. It's where you position yourself and all that. He helped me out a lot. kidding aside, he did. He took me under his wing and helped me out.
Well, it's not because I liked him. It was
No,
because
he doesn't
I
like
wanted to go home.
We don't like each other at all, and so you can tell. But no, it was cool. I loved working with him. He was a good conductor. Him and the guys out at Lompoc. That was even though that was the toughest job probably here, I would say.
I think so.
It was the most fun because the guys that caught it mainly didn't have much seniority here, and so we had a lot of fun together. And I enjoyed that job more than anything, I think, other than the through freight. It was a blast working up here. The San Luis terminal, I think, with the guys, was one of my favorite places to work as a brakeman. My favorite place to switch in Southern California was a place called Harbor Beltline.
Yep.
And it was a small yard of about 27 tracks, and it was established, I think, in the early 20s.
Yeah, it was owned by the Santa Fe, the UP, the PE, and the SP.
Yeah, and they all contributed workforce and equipment. And you'd work with an interchangeable crew, guys from Union Pacific, Pacific Electric, Southern Pacific, and we used to call it remember the old TV show F Troop? Well, it was the F Troop of the railroad, and it was so much fun to work. We didn't do a whole lot of things by the book, but we got it done, and we got it done with fewer crews and less overhead, and it was a ball to work there. Switching yard was a bowl yard, and so you can kick the cars and not worry about things. There were a couple stories of a couple cars going into the harbor. I wasn't on that crew, and but it was fun. It was fun. And up here again, working colorful characters. I'm sitting next to them, and that you work with guys, especially down in Taylor Yard in Los Angeles. My formative years on the railroad, because switchmen did have a very flexible schedule, and so a lot of the guys had jobs on the side, and so I would work with rodeo cowboys, school teachers, actors, professors, drunks, and it was a fabulous career. Fun.
So elaborate a little bit on the differeces between switchman and brakeman. Switchman is tied to a
Brakemen are smart, and these guys are just walking around with
basically,
That's the
we're
biggest
the
difference.
missing link. Switching, according to the brakeman, the switchmen are the missing link between evolution and mankind. But there's been a debate and a rivalry between switchmen and brakemen like forever. Probably not so much anymore because everything has changed
Everybody's
so much.
one and the same anymore.
But
the switchmen, what they did, they worked the yards. I had my choice. I was hired by a Pacific Electric conductor that had became a train master by the name of Earl Craig, and I got my job through another conductor on the PE by the name of Bob Coe. They were both good friends, and that's how I got my job. And he asked me at that time, Mr. Craig, he says, do you want to be a fireman, do you want to be a switchman, or do you want to be a brakeman? And of course I said I want to be whatever Bob Coe is. Well, he was a brakeman conductor on the PE, so that's what I became. A brakeman doesn't work the yards proper like Bill did in Taylor Yard. We would work small yards like City of Industry, Los Nietos, Long Beach yards, and up here it would have been Guadalupe Yard, Lompoc Yard, and things like that. But your main terminal yards like San Luis Obispo, Los Angeles, Oakland, and today's West Colton Yard, they're all manned by switchmen. And those guys don't go on the road, they stay in the terminal. And we would take the mainline trains from like Los Angeles to Indio, from San Luis Obispo to Watsonville in those days. Nowadays they go to Oakland. There were switchmen in Santa Barbara. I think there were switchmen here in San Luis.
There was.
Years and years ago,
I
believe.
My uncle was a brakeman in San Luis in the 50s, and they lived just a couple miles down on a couple blocks down on Isley Street. And I, as a kid in the 50s, would walk with him, because back in those days, conductors had their own cabooses. And the switchmen in the yard, when they'd switch the trains out, they had to switch out a caboose. Each conductor had his own
assigned caboose.
Assigned caboose.
Right.
So my uncle took me to his caboose, and I thought, oh my. And back in those days, 16-hour law, and there was like probably 6 guys on the train crew when you count the engineer and the fireman and all the conductor and brakeman. You could be on the road, work your 16 if it was a road switcher, and have to take a siding, rest 8 hours, get on the road again. You'd be gone for days. And one of the first things my uncle would do was one of the brakemen go to the grocery store and stock up the caboose, because you could be gone for a long time. It was a totally different world. But fast forward when I became a switcher, and right, we thought, our mentality was, we make the trains and then the lazy brakemen just get on them and ride. And that's all they do, and wave at the children, and that's about it. It wasn't until I went down the Harbor Beltline when I started working with brakemen who worked what they call locals and road switchers. Those guys were good car hands. And in Taylor Yard, it was more push and pull. Pull a string of cars, shove it into a track. You'd make the trains up in blocks. Except for the places, J Yard and the industries of LA, you didn't do a lot of switching like the brakemen did. And so I wasn't used to that until I went down the Harbor Beltline. But I liked it. And then when I came up here and got into it and working with Virlon and some really good guys like Rick Bacon and stuff, it was fun. It was a lot of fun, but you had to learn. There's a whole different mindset, totally different. The agreements and how you made your money, and you need to be a Philadelphia lawyer to figure out all that stuff.
No, you don't.
Yeah, well, you were raised
switchman,
with,
you would, yes.
Switchman, it was different. We were civilized. We had like civil rights. They were slaves, but they made a lot more money because they lived on the railroad. I went home at night, but again, kidding aside, both of them were fun. Had their aspects.
Railroading was just a fine, prime job, period.
It was.
I've had a lot of jobs in my life. I spent, of course, 4 years in the Navy, a year as a machinist, and then when I'd get cut off from the railroad, I'd go get a job for sometimes a month, sometimes 3 months, sometimes 6 months, but always came back to the railroad.
Did you get laid off every year?
Yeah,
for how long?
For the first couple of years.
Yeah, I didn't work full time for 10 years.
Oh no, I didn't get laid off after probably 1968 or 69 until I moved up here. Once I moved up here, I lost 7 years seniority and retained it when I went to Bakersfield in late '85 because SP had a 5-year long-range plan to shut down, as you well know. And so I went to Bakersfield. Bill stayed here, and he worked LA and whatnot until he could come back into here. I never did come back until about 2000. And then when I came back here, all that seniority I had lost by coming up here, now they were in the same hub as Bakersfield. And so since I was in Bakersfield on the hub change, when the UP took over, I had my original seniority here in San Luis Obispo.
Explain. We had something called system seniority. That's why we moved up here. You aware of that? Explain that. Where you could, I had, for instance, in Taylor Yard, we both hired out in '66. He hired out in February. I hired out in July. But if we worked at Taylor Yard, I had my rights. I would have seniority on him. But if outside of that, if I went on the road, it was a 72 date, right? Everybody had a 72 date, but the original dates kicked in. So I would always, he had more seniority than I on the road. And so that's why depending on what district you moved to, that's where you would lose seniority. And so when the crunch came here in '87, he went to Bakersfield where he had original seniority. I went to LA to get work. So we had better seniority. That's how all of that worked. And interesting. That's the reason I moved up here, because I used to spend a lot of summers up here. My family, there was a lot of us, Irish Catholics, and so there was an LA Berry family of 6 kids, and then San Luis Berry family of 6 kids. And my uncle, they all came out from Sioux Falls, South Dakota, back in the old Grapes of Wrath thing. And my uncle moved up here for his kids for health reasons at the time. He became a brakeman conductor. So I spent, we'd swap cousins during the summer. And so I spent a lot of summers up here.
I often wonder what happened.
That's it. And yeah, and in the yard, walking with Uncle Lee to the yards and stuff like that. And so I always had a love for San Luis. And then fast forward, I grow up. He never thinks I've really grown up, but I have. And so I moved up here. Always wanted to move up here. System seniority kicked in. I did some investigating. Figured I could work up here, I thought, full time, and came up here in '82, and then got laid off a lot and had to do what I had to do. But it was fun. Never dull.
Good job. Never dull. Never a dull moment in the railroad.
What
Even if you're just sitting back as a brakeman going like this, going along, it's never a dull moment.
You had to be prepared for everything. So that's another thing I had to get used to. When I went on the road, conductors were gods. They called the shots, and you didn't dare question them. I learned that lesson the hard way a couple times. I'm going, really? Because the guy that brought me into the railroad, he was a president of the Switchman's Local, and this guy knew his stuff, and he knew all the ins and outs, and taught me when to make a stand, don't make a stand unless you know your stuff, things like that. So I was savvy with the Switchman way and the agreement. Didn't realize it's a whole different world, and I had to really learn the hard way with a couple of conductors. But that's okay. I came up here and submit to their, be a team player and do that kind of thing. But there were some really interesting conductors.
Well, that's the way I came up here too. I came up in 1976. We wanted to raise our daughters in a better place than the Los Angeles area. So my wife and I had came up here on vacation twice. Twice in '72, and then once again in '75. And the next year, we just decided we're going to take the girls up to. We ended up in Grover City in those days, Grover Beach today, and we bought a nice little home about 300 yards off the beach.
Yep.
And we raised our daughters here, and then of course I worked Guadalupe as much as I possibly could because I did not like going on the road. Coming off the Pacific Electric, I had worked nothing but locals for those first 10 years. Once in a while I'd go out in the main line and go to Indio or come up to Santa Barbara, but that wasn't very often. But once we came up here, everybody knows this is God's country.
Yep.
And so we decided this is where we're going to stay. And I lost 15 years between 1985 and 2000 because of the Southern Pacific and their ideas of shutting down.
Mm-hmm.
And of course the Union Pacific, when they bought the SP in '96, one of the finest things they did was open this up as a home terminal.
Yeah.
In mid '99, and I waited a year. My wife and I came back, and I finished out my career here because this is what we were going to retire anyway. If we couldn't, if I'd had to stay in Bakersfield till 2005, that's what I would have done. 2006, but we were able to come back. We came back in mid 2000, and so I just worked until the last day of February of 2005. So the end of this month, 28th of this month, will be 10 years for me. And of course, as good a railroad jobs as they are, retirement's the best job. Even retired from the railroad, they pretty well take care of me. So that's what counts.
Yeah, I've been blessed when I'm still associate pastor at a church in Rio Grande, California, and I'm very grateful that when I do retire, I'll be able to say I had two careers that I loved. And who can say that? Not many people can say that, and I'm very grateful for that. And San Luis, going to work in San Luis was usually fun. I didn't mind. It was always, when I got the calls at 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning, 4 in the morning, that didn't bother me because it was like a sense of adventure, especially because I didn't know much about Northern California. And going to Watsonville, and I'm an LA Dodger fan and getting in fights all the time with all the San Francisco Giant fans that I had to work with. Okay, Yeah. So and a couple of them still here, and I'm amazed that, you know, they're still functioning in society. But that's a whole nother story. But the guys, it was fun. For the most part, the guys that you work with here were nice guys.
They were. All of them were pretty nice guys.
Family guys, hard workers, good rails. And
beautiful scenery.
Oh,
down,
my
up and
gosh.
down, even going to Watsonville,
Yeah.
going through the valley, that Salinas
Yeah.
Valley. But going down the coast, once you come out at Narlon,
Yeah.
it's just the most beautiful place in the world between there and Santa Barbara, Ventura. It's just
It is.
absolutely, you can't beat it.
Every now and then in the 80s, we would, you have to qualify to work Amtrak. That's when Amtrak they would use the employees on the SP lines. So I learned that lesson the hard way. I got called for Amtrak and didn't have a suit. So then I lost a day and a half's pay because I couldn't report. So I got a suit, and it was a hoot. And I would usually only work it during the holidays when all the seniority was on vacation. But one time, I was the rear brakeman on Amtrak, and I didn't know. I just checked the gauges and have to be at a certain place at a certain time. And I went up to get a cup of coffee or something, and I had to get back to check things out. And it was Christmas time, and the place was packed. And this guy just ticked off, mad, comes up to me, and he thinks I'm the conductor. And I'm going, I should have got a sign saying, no, I'm a ex-switchman, I'm a moron, I know nothing. But he comes up to me and he thinks I know everything, and he's just disgruntled, just really mad about this, that, and the other thing. And I'm going, okay. And I had to get back to my post, and I said, I'll tell you what you do. This is where you have to think fast on your feet. And I go to the club car and get some Amtrak stationery. I didn't even know if there was Amtrak stationery. And I said, and write your complaints out on Amtrak stationery and send it in, and I'll bet you they'll listen to you if it's on Amtrak stationery. Great idea. And he runs off, and I run back, and I didn't have a clue. But a couple of the guys that would ride that, the passengers, the retirees, they said that between Guadalupe and before you hit LA, was the best, one of the top 5 routes in the nation.
It still is.
It's beautiful.
It still is.
You see cliffs, it's like you're in Scotland, you know? It's beautiful. And then again, going over the grade, Cuesta grade, and sometimes the days, that's what they don't call it the Gold Coast for nothing. It was beautiful. And I used to think, I'm getting paid for this, and I'm getting paid good money for this, to ride the rails. And staying in Watsonville was cool. That
Yeah.
old, wasn't it that hotel we stayed at?
Recitar.
Okay, it was just older than dirt, and it had the old wrought iron heaters in there, and it was like going in back to the 20s or the 30s. And yeah, it was fun.
Well, my first love, of course, was always working on the Pacific Electric. I absolutely love the PE. Even today, I'm a big fan of the PE. There's only 9 of the PE guys left now. Most of them have passed away. Well, they've all passed away, biggest part of them. But I absolutely loved working the PE. The jobs were great. But as far as areas, this area here, the coast, the Central Coast, far and away is the finest place I've ever worked. And I've worked all over the LA area, from LA down to Indio, LA up to Bakersfield, Bakersfield to Roseville, Bakersfield to Tracy. I've worked all over this Southern California area, and San Luis Obispo is just absolutely fantastic. The most fabulous place in the world to work.
It is. I went to Yuma once. You ever go to Yuma?
No, I never had to
I
do
had.
that.
I got cut off here, and then I went down to work out of LA, and then for some reason they sent me Colton. You'd go from Colton to what was that Colton run to Indio?
Well, that was LA to Indio. You
Well,
probably
Colton-
got sent to Indio and then augmented down to Yuma.
Yeah, that's probably what happened. I had to make a run from India to Yuma, and I remember having to take 3 shirts because it was so. You'd leave Colton, it was okay, it was nice, and then it got a little cold. Then you hit the desert, and this was June, and I made 1 run to Yuma, and I'm going, oh please Lord, not again. It was so hot, and it was so desolate. And those little modules they put you up in, and oh yeah,
You guys know what modules are? The trailers.
yeah,
We had those at Colton too, and they were miserable. They gave you an air conditioner, what they called an air conditioner.
Yeah.
I think it was a little swamp cooler,
yeah.
and it was hot.
Yeah, it made the Motel 6 look like a 5-star hotel, that kind of a deal. But it was a roof over your head, and they always had a little greasy spoon restaurant there, and
Of course, then you come to St. Louis, and all you do is open your slider, and you got your breeze, your cool air from the ocean, and
yeah,
you just can't beat this place. This is the most fantastic place in the world.
it is, and just a good time, fun time.
Well, any particular recollections of neighbors along the railroad, or you had a passenger who was kind of problematic? Any loads that shifted, or you went back to check and found something you never thought you'd see, or
Yeah, I had to walk my
those?
train. I had to walk my train at where
Good
was
question.
it? Honda, I believe. No, it was Conception, Point Conception, and it was about 3 o'clock in the morning. And I get up about 10 cars from the caboose, and there was a bum on the end of a covered hopper, and they
Yeah.
got the deck in there like
Yeah,
this, and that's where they
exactly.
rode.
Exactly.
And 3 o'clock in the morning, and it was pitch black. There
Yep.
was no moon out. And this guy says, "Hey, you know what time it is?" And I jumped about 3 feet off the air. My feet were spinning as I started back towards the caboose, and I jumped in the caboose, and I went and I locked both doors. And I couldn't even tell the conductor what happened until I calmed down after a couple of minutes.
Yeah, yeah. I had several of those. Good question. One time we were going to Oxnard, and we had to set out and pick up and then keep going to Colton. And they told us on the radio, just outside of Oxnard, don't bring the train in yet. There's been someone was killed on the main line. What the gangs would do then is kill somebody and put the body on the main line, let the trains run them over, so that it would look like that. So they got it cleared up, and then we knew that was just a ruse. It was probably a gang thing, and this was about 3 or 4 in the morning, and I had to set out the cars and pick up and then inspect it. And it's pitch black out there. And so I'm going, okay. And I'm walking, checking out the one string of cars we got to pick up, and I see a couple guys walking towards me. So the lanterns then were about this big, and I'm not obviously tiny, and I got up as big as I could and as tall as I could and made sure they saw my lantern. And I'm pretty much a coward. I'm a wimp. I'm in a big man's body. I'm not a fighter. I'm not whatever. I'm a lover, not a fighter. And so I'm walking down the thing, and these guys, and I'm going, okay, Lord, here we go. And I bluffed them, and nothing happened. But I've had a couple calls, like he said one time I was pulled into Taylor Yard, and we had to tie down the train, and I went to one of those cars, and there was a guy, big dude, that was sleeping there, and there was the break, and we were just eye to eye, and I literally screamed. I went, oh my God. And I said, buddy, don't do that. You're going to get yourself killed out here. But the fun story, though, I was working. We would go to, Oxnard. Oh, we'd go to work at Guadalupe, and then take a cut to Oxnard and service the industries along the way, spend the night in Oxnard, and come back. So we're switching the train out in Guadalupe. I can tell this now that I'm no longer there and not get busted for this. But there was a couple, little Hispanic couple, sitting down, young couple in their early 20s. We're switching. And I got to talk to them, and I said in broken English, I says, you want to get on the train, don't you? And they said, yeah. And I said, what's up? And they said they were going to go to Oxnard to work in the fields. And I said, okay. I said, so just stay here. And I put an empty, we didn't have any cabooses, and I put an empty on the rear end. And I said, get inside. Totally against the rules. And anyway, but these are cute little family. And so I put them inside, and I said, don't stick your head out until you see me. And then so we rode, and at a couple spots, we'd do an industry, and I'd ride in the empty to the next industry because it was only a couple miles down. They're showing me pictures of their kids and this and that and the other thing, and they were just the cutest young couple. So we got to Oxnard, and they were so grateful. And
So why didn't you let them ride in the caboose?
we didn't have one.
Oh, there's those days. Okay.
Yeah, we didn't have a caboose, or I would have. But it was cute. Gave them a few bucks and said, be on your way. That's why railroading was fun. Because, there were rules, and we were safe, but there was
all rules are made to be bent.
But like I said, working with the Harbor Beltline, oh my gosh, you cut corners, shall we say, and but you got the job done, and they knew what they were doing, and the supervisors, the train masters knew what you were doing, and they, like, 8 hours, right? Well, get all the industries spotted, and go home, and run. It's called running your beans. You wouldn't go to lunch. You wouldn't take a coffee break. You just get out there and do it. And you're scratching their back. They're scratching yours, especially if an emergency. How many times do you get called, hey, could you come in? We need you right away. Could you do something special for us? Or after. We do it. And there was this one job at the Harbor Beltline. At the time, I was an associate pastor at a small church in Orange County. And so pretty much working full-time there, and they didn't pay me anything, and the railroad supplemented my income. Well, I had this great job. It had Wednesday and Thursday off, went to work at 2:30 in the afternoon, and 90% of the time we were on our way home at 6:30. And we felt it was an insult during the summer if we had to use our lanterns. And again, one of them, UP foreman, PE brakeman, switchman, maybe an SP engineer, and the one guy, the foreman, he was going to, this was back in the late 70s, early 80s, he was going to be a new job called a photojournalist. And so the other guy was just an old redneck cowboy that probably had horses and stuff. That job was perfect. I was able to work full time, support my family, and still do the work at church and be home at night for my kids. Great job.
You know, in my 40 years of railroading, I think back of one person. His name is Rick Bacon. Rick hired out June 30th here in San Luis Obispo, 1973. And when I came up here in 76, he had just over 3 years seniority, which is not really a lot of seniority. But the first job I worked with him, I bid in a job just before or right after Thanksgiving, just before Thanksgiving of 76. And Rick bid the job in also. So Rick, with only 3 years seniority, taught me Guadalupe Yard, and I mean he taught me which track bent the most downhill, where the rocks were, so you can use it for chunks. He's just a smart young man. He hired out here, and to this day, I can say, in all my career, he was the best brakeman I ever had, even more than Leadlegs here.
Leadlegs was here for comedy relief, but yeah, Rick was the real deal. Yeah, it was fun. Like I said, a pleasure working with these guys. I had seniority on Rick, but if we caught a job and he was conductor on a switcher, and they had what's called the pin man and the tags, and I had seniority. Usually the seniority took the tags. I'd let Rick, because Rick and him working together were like a couple of maestros, and so I knew you had to know your element. And so what, Rick, you do that, and let's get the job done. You know.
Yeah, there were a lot of good employees here in San Luis Obispo, but like I say, Rick Bacon was probably the finest brakeman I ever had in the whole time I ever worked. And I worked with Rick off and on for quite a few years. And of course, when I came back here, every crew just about was conductor only except the Guadalupe job. And I never got to work with Rick on that because I didn't work the Guadalupe job except if I got called in emergency once in a while to go braking for the guy that was down there. But he still remains the best I ever had. And there were, like I say, there were quite a few real good car hands and come out of this town and this coast. Again, this is the finest place you could possibly ever want to work on the railroad, as far as I'm concerned.
What I was amazed, some of the conductors, especially on what they call the West End, JB's last name, who...
Oh, Crosno.
Yeah, Crosno. He big blowhard, big bark, no bite. But he San Luis was his terminal, and he was a really good conductor, going to Watsonville and back. He used to amaze me at how he could predict what train we were going to catch, what was coming out of the north, and all that, and sharpshoot on the road. He was amazing.
Yeah, he was good.
He was really amazing. But he'd bully you a little bit. When I was a switchman, so I'd get teased a lot, ex-switchman, yeah, and that's fine. I don't have a problem with that at all, and it was fun. Well, we had at the time when I was at the church, we had a TV show, and I would interview guys on the TV, and I would play the devil's advocate. I'd ask questions so that the average guy who doesn't know much about the Bible and stuff could get it. And so I'd act like I was an idiot, which I know is not a stretch, and would have fun with that. And so we were doing that. And so at night I get called out and I catch JB's crew. And I'm in the locker room, a bunch of guys in there. And he goes, "Well, there he is." And he goes off on me. "That's the dumbest show I've ever seen in my life." And he goes, "You asked the dumbest questions." And I go, "Well, you know why I do that, JV?" And he goes, "Why?" And I go, "So people like you can get it." And everybody cracked up. And so we go, and then we're coming back. That's when you had cabooses. And we're riding along. And it's like I said, living here was idyllic. There was one conductor, I can't remember his name, but he taught me. Remember when we pitched? We were in a fast league pitching league together. I was a pitcher, softball. We had one conductor here who used to pitch and would teach me stuff. We'd take our gloves to Lompoc and practice and stuff. Anyway, it was just a fun job. Well, one time JB and I are coming back, and I'm working on my notes, and for the next show. And I go, who better to interview than JB? Here's a layman, here's a conductor, here's a whatever, non-church guy. What does he think? And I said, "Hey, JB, can I ask you a few questions?" He got real nervous. I go, "Don't worry, JB. I'm not going to make you join my church or give me any money or nothing. It's okay. So I'm not going to take a collection. It's okay." And we're not like that, JB. I said, I want to know, what's your view on certain things? And he just became a good old boy, and we had the best time. And but he was a good conductor, man. He lost his foot.
Yeah, I know. Under a caboose.
Yeah.
We also had a guy here. You guys remember Bonnie and Clyde Barrow?
I
Not
don't
personally, but
Well, I know.
seen
We
them.
didn't either.
Verlin's older than me. He's older than dirt. He remembers Abraham Lincoln. He voted for him. Go ahead.
Now, I'm 11 years older than Dirt.
There you go.
But we had a conductor here. I was a direct descendant of Clyde Barrow, and
No
his name was
Oh.
Clyde Barrow.
I never knew that.
I broke for Clyde for a long time.
I never knew that.
Right out of the bat, we'd get our paperwork, get on the caboose, and we're leaving town. Clyde was on top of a toolbox, which everybody calls a bed, but it's a toolbox
Sure.
with a pad about this thick.
Yeah.
And Clyde would be in bed, and I'd wake him up just before Watsonville, and he said, "Well, you can go to bed now." I said, "Yeah, right, Clyde, we're here." But yeah, he was a direct descendant of
I'll be darned.
Clyde Barrow.
I never knew that.
Yeah.
And then I was told by Danny, a hoghead that was just we all loved working with, and he told me later that after in the last 10 years that you could, if you pulled into a siding, it was against the rules to sleep. You get busted for that, but you're working all these hours, and guys would take turns like that, and it was actually safe. Well, they finally got it, didn't they? Because they let you do that.
Yeah, after a while, they finally
Towards the
let us
end.
take what they call power naps.
Yeah, which was smart, and because my gosh, my toughest time was like just if you're working all night and when the sun's just coming up, oh,
That's the hardest part of the job.
that was brutal.
It's not hard to go to work at 10 o'clock at night, but it's so hard to be working at 5:30, 5:45 in the morning.
Especially if you're not switching, if you're not active. But I'll tell you, some of the most beautiful sunrises I ever saw was when I was working. Then they would work from Surf. The home terminal was Oxnard, and you would go to Colton. No, yeah, you'd sign up at Oxnard, take a train to Colton, and then bring it back to Surf, and then spend the night, and then go back. Well, the beauty of that is by the time you got to Surf, the sun was just coming up. You're right on the ocean, and it was spectacular. The
You need to stay
sunrise.
awake long enough to see it.
Well, yeah, I did, because it was a switcher, and we were on caboose and all that, and you had the fire going, and it was just old school. It was like being out, with the guys on a camp trip or something, and I spent a lot of times in L.A., the local yard. We had these old shanties, wood-burning stove, and all the crews, and you trade off in switching certain parts of the train, but in the cold winter night, you huddled around that wood-burning stove, and that's when you heard all the folklore and all the stories. And when I hired out, didn't have any seniority, and so you put in what's called a blanket bid just to get whatever. And every now and then, randomly, you'd get a job with a bunch of old heads. And I remember one time, and it was called the Sea Yard, they were the main job, the bull job was to make up the trains, and they had two what they call switch tenders, one at the top of the yard, one at the bottom of the yard. And the foreman would give you signals or give you a tab and tell you what he was doing and switching, and you'd whatever. I didn't know. I show up at work, I'm 19, barely 19. I didn't know that the top switch tender, he had one switch to throw, and that was it. He was probably in his 70s, past retirement. He had half of his arm. He was number one. It was called Lanny. And I didn't know that they just carried Lanny. And he was just to show up to talk and to make coffee. And I let him, he threw a switch. I didn't know. All hell came down on me. The conductor, or the foreman, was an ex-rodeo guy, just read me the riot act, and I cannot use that vocabulary. And he goes, "Don't you ever let him throw a switch." I went, "Okay, I got it." I go, "Ooh." So, but Lanny was number one, and he was the grand patriarch, and you just sit around Lanny and drink his coffee and switch out the cars, and good stuff, fun stuff.
Yeah, we had quite an excitement here back in 1980. Were you guys here in 1980?
I was.
We had a major derailment at Surf, and the conductor never did return. In
Really?
fact, I'm Billy Jackson.
I've heard of his. I've heard the name.
No, you were gone. You weren't
Yeah,
here yet.
I've heard
That's
the
right.
name. I heard the legend of Billy Jackson.
Yeah, he never did return. In fact, I just got in an argument with George Todd the other day
Oh my!
on
Okay.
train orders
Okay.
about that. He thinks it was
George Todd.
that guy they called what was his name? I don't know. I can't remember. Bob something. He thinks it was him, and I said, "No, it's Bill Jackson." And so we kind of went back and forth on that. But that was a bad derailment. And at the time, Bill Giles was the train master here, and he was on a vacation for 3 weeks in Europe. So he was out of the country at the time. And boy, when he got back, you talk about everything breaking loose. It broke loose.
We got Bill Giles, forgot more than most people know, and he was a stickler, but he was fair, and he knew how to run. He ran with a iron fist, but he was fair, and most people respected him. So go ahead.
He was a member of the museum for his last year of his life.
Recognize the name.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
He's
He
a good
was
guy.
when he finally retired. Well, he actually calmed down quite a bit before he retired. But after he retired, he became a good old Joe, is what he was. I got a call from him about, I guess it was about 3 years ago. And this guy retired back in I think it was 1987. He ironed out in the 40s. And I get a call from this guy, and it says, "Hey, Virlon, you know who this is?" "No." He said, "Well, it's a voice out of your past." And I said, "Well, how far back we talking?" He said, "A long way." So he says, "This is Bill Giles." Well, by talking to him, you could tell he had really calmed down. So I started, saying, "Hey, come on up to the retirees breakfast." So just like I did with you, which is probably a mistake, but
It was.
You show
But
up.
I pay for your coffee, so just
Yeah, you do.
deal with it.
But anyway, Bill started coming to that. We took him out to Bitter Creek, and he was an old school train master. He had eyes in the back of his head.
He did. He was good.
He could be walking that way, and if you just started chewing your mouth at him, he could see you doing it from back here. He just had a knack.
Yeah, he did.
Railroaders like that were absolutely fantastic to work for. These kids that come out of college, and we've had a couple of them up here, they are a bear to work with. Guys like Giles, if you did something wrong, don't lie to him.
Right.
And there was no problem. No demerits assessed. Just no discipline really assessed, except you got chewed out pretty good. But he was here for quite a few years, about 12 years, I think, before he finally retired. Other than that, not a whole lot happened in San Luis Obispo. It was a
But
very,
what
very
happened
quiet
with
terminal.
with Billy Jackson?
Oh, Billy never came back to work.
What happened there?
There was 3 trains involved. There was one in the siding. The local was in the house track by the depot, and the guy came down the main line, and brake rigging had dropped, and a set of trucks twisted,
My.
and the car started flying all over the place. So one of the cars flew on top of Billy's caboose and crushed the caboose to about this high.
Oh, my gosh.
Well, he had a big hole in the side of his head, and he almost died from it. A bum found him in the caboose, heard him moaning, and went in and helped get him out. But Billy never did come back. They blacked out and stuff like that.
Wow.
But let's see, George Todd was the assistant train master at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Bill was the train master, and like I said, he was out of the country at the time. But that was kind of a nasty, nasty derailment. A guy named Burl Bray was an engineer. His son-in-law was one of Bill Jackson's brakemen. I can't think of who the other one was, but he had him take him. He had the company take him to the hospital because he had breathed in some kind of bad dust, as he said. Well, I went down and got a little vial of it. George Todd and I were kind of friendly. I'd known George since George was hired out. So I went down and I got a little vial of the dust, and I had it analyzed. The attorneys had it analyzed. It turned out to be plaster of Paris. So he was okay. But he's another guy. He quit the railroad finally, and he never came back. But there's guys that hire out in this railroad that they have no business working here.
Yeah.
There was a bad accident back in the late 80s on the Cajon Pass, and one of the young fellows that was killed on that knew no more the day he hired out than the day he died, and that was almost 20 years later. Some people this job, it's strange. Either you pick it up or you don't.
Yeah, it gets in your blood.
Yeah, it gets in your blood and you learn it.
It wasn't, when I hired out, it was like family. It's not what you know, it's who you know. Like I said, my buddy's dad said, "Want a summer job?" And he became my uncle. And so he would train you. You'd go to work, and they didn't have much of a training program back then. And you didn't want to embarrass the family. And you just, it's something that can't be really taught in a classroom. You've got to be out there, and it gets in your blood. And it's fun. It really is. It's a fun job. But back to Giles, in L.A., we used to fear him because he had, the railroad would send him out to do the investigations, and he was like a lawyer.
Yeah, he was their hatchet man.
He was. He would, and oh my, we feared him. And then when I moved up here, they said, you know who's the train master? It's Giles. And I'm going, oh boy. But then, again, he was an old school. Don't lie to him. Be honest. Do a good job. Do an honest day's work. Don't lie to him.
I was on the daylight local at Guadalupe one day. And our first thing in the morning was to go down the yard, line the derail out of the yard, and line the switch to go out into the passing track at Guadalupe. And we would switch all day like that. Well, normally we would just leave that switch and derail like lined for movement for us. So one day the dispatcher said they wanted to meet the two Amtraks, 12 and 13 there at Guadalupe. So we said, okay. So we decided to go ahead and line the switch back, line the derail back. Well, we made a big mistake because when we come out of lunch, we forgot all about it.
Yep, oopsie.
We pull the asphalt and the perishables out, and we start shoving back in, and
Boom.
About 2 or 3 of the asphalt and 1 perishable went on the ground. So, of course, I got to go call Giles, so I walked back to the depot at Guadalupe, and I called him, and he said, what happened? So I told him. He said, all right, he said, I'll be down there in a little while. So he comes down, and the whole crew's sitting there waiting for him. He says, all right, you guys just go ahead and take off. So he tells me to stay there. So him and I walk down to the derailment site at the west end of the yard, and here's this mess. And he says, what happened? So I told him, I didn't lie to him. I says, normally we have this line for our movement. And I says, this time we had to line it back for the Amtraks to meet, and when we came out, I forgot to line them back. And he says, okay, he says, go ahead, take off, go home. He says, we'll clean it up in the morning.
Yeah.
Last I ever heard of it.
Yeah. In the 80s, I had a chance to go on short-term missions trips I went to the Philippines 3 times. And I wanted to go to him to get, and then plus, I had to get permission when we were doing that TV show. And so I went up to him, and they said, "Oh, he's not going to give you a special time off." You know, everybody feared him, but you just went in and just was yourself and just be honest with him. And I said, I got a shot to go to the Philippines for the short-term missions thing. Can I get a couple weeks off? Can I take my vacation at such and such time? Because I didn't have much seniority, and I didn't get. Usually, I took my vacation in the winters because I knew I'd be laid off and so on and so forth. Well, this wasn't. This was October. And I said, would you mind if I did this? And he said, no, go for it. And then as it turned out, I was able to go 2 more times. And I went 3 times to the Philippines in the late 80s, and he was golden, and not a problem. And then when I finally became, I know it's a shock that I actually passed the conductor's exam, but, you know, they were real slow with me. And anyway,
no, you were real slow with
them.
us.
But anyway, you had to have, after you took the written, you had to have 2 orals by trained masters. The one down south was okay. It was the next switchman gave it to him. It was good, no problem. Up here, it was going to be Giles, and I thought, oh brother, he knows. He's forgotten more than I'll ever know. And so I was a little nervous, and I went in. He was a gentleman. He just said this, that, and the other thing. Here's this. Here's your weakness. Here's your strength. Let me help you here. And but my fun Giles story was, we have some real characters. What's Pete's last name? He became a prison guard. He was a hoghead. He comes to the breakfast.
Oh, Rasmussen.
Yeah, Pete and I could do accents and different characters. Pete's a hoghead. I'm a breakfast. So if we're switching out a cut of cars, I've got my radio. He's on the engine, of course, and I'm giving him information. And I would do it as different characters from TV with accents and Saturday Night Live, stuff like that. He would come back. He had the best Nazi German guard accent you'd ever want to hear. So we're going back and forth and doing this stuff, and that's just what we did, and we're laughing. So we switch out. We're coming in about 4 in the morning. Switch out the thing, put everything away. About 5 when we tie up, and the clerk goes, Giles came in early this morning and heard your little your comedy routine, and he would like to talk to you. And I'm going, uh-oh. So we go upstairs, and he goes, you guys are funny. He goes, you're really funny. Well done. He goes, but you just broke every FCC rule ever. And he goes, don't be doing that again. And I'm going, oh, okay. So we didn't do it on the main line, but we did it up in the White Hills when they'd catch it because nobody could hear us. So fun stuff.
Another thing along those lines was Jivey Jack. You guys ever heard of Jivey Jack?
Oh my gosh.
He was when I moved here. He was about I don't know how old he was. He was an old hippie.
He was
An old hippie. Today he's 70. He's 79. And he's still an old hippie.
He is.
Still rides his old Harley
He's
Davidson.
cleaned up though. He doesn't do drugs anymore.
Oh,
He doesn't.
no.
I've heard. I know someone at church that knows him.
Okay, good. Anyway, Jivey's thing was he was self-taught on the harmonica. He would take a rubber band and the button on the handset he'd wire it up with that rubber band, lay it down. He'd play that harmonica for hour and a half, nonstop. And that's the kind of characters we had around
He
here.
would wear it always during the summer, a leather vest and no shirt.
No shirt, no
Just
t-shirt,
a
no-
leather vest.
Just his Levi's and his cowboy boots,
Yeah.
and that leather vest,
And
long ponytail,
exactly.
hat on backwards.
oh yeah.
Quite the character. He lives in Arkansas now.
Yep.
He retired and went back to Arkansas.
Yep. And he'd give you a shirt off, the vest off his back. He would, that type of guy. People would come in that need a place to stay. Hey, sleep on my floor. We'll get a mattress. He would take anybody in.
I did that with him.
Did
because
you
when I
really?
first moved up here, I came up about 30 days ahead of my wife and my girls to get my seniority established and everything, and I had no place to go. And Jivey was my conductor. I was on the
wow.
beats. I bid the job in. Jivey was a conductor, and on the way back, he says, "Where do you stay?" I said, "I don't know yet. Probably in my truck." And he was staying in the back of a store in Grover. Actually, Arroyo Grande, up on Grand Avenue.
Oh, that's funny.
And the back of it was just a big room with a kitchen and a restroom, and that was it. But he had like 4 mattresses on the floor, and he said, "Well, you can have one of the mattresses if you want to."
Exactly.
So for almost a month, I slept on that mattress with Jivey. And then after I moved my wife and my girls up here, my girls were just little girls, and I'm coming out of St. Louis one day, and I come up over, I think it's Ontario Grade it's called, where you drop into Shell Beach, right, coming out of St. Louis. And here's Jivey over on the side of the freeway with Betsy.
Oh, yeah.
Motorcycle.
Okay.
And she's down. She won't run. So I stop, and I back up, and he says, "Can you help me load it on your truck?" He says, "She ain't running right." So I said, "Okay." So I take him down to that store back there where he lived. And he said, "Anything I can ever do for you?" He says, "Let me know." I said, "Well, I'll tell you what." I said, "How about in about an hour or so, come down to my house and play the harmonica for my girls?"
There you go.
He came down, and we sat in the garage for about 2.5 hours, and he played that harmonica nonstop for those girls. That's the kind of guy this Jivey Jack
He's just
is.
a good old boy.
He's just good old boy. Yeah, he was.
Right.
I don't think there was anybody that didn't like.
Oh
Jivey.
no,
He's just one of those guys that everybody liked.
he did. He just was a kick in the pants.
And then you had the Tommy Negretti's and
Oh my gosh.
Negretti, and well, there was Negretti, Jivey Jack, and Don Merneke all on that work train
Oh,
when
yeah.
when the siding blew out down there at just north of Gaviota. I can't think of the name of it now.
Yeah, I
But,
worked with Merneke and Negretti in Guadalupe.
I guess this one time on that work train down there, they had like 3 or 4 just huge officials of the SP come down here, and they wanted to go down there. So I forget who the roadmaster was, took them down in his high rail. So they got down there, and the first thing these guys wanted to know, who is Jivey Jack? His name was synonymous with comedy all
yeah.
the way to San Francisco.
Oh yeah.
Everybody on the system, well, not the system, but everybody from San Francisco to L.A. knew him. He wore on his work boots, right at the bottom of the shoes where you start to lace them, he had bells, little bitty bells there. And you'd hear him walking in, he'd be walking in with those bells ringing. But that was Jivey. Who else was characters?
Negretti was hyper. Oh my gosh.
He was nutso.
He was hyper. Nice
Yeah.
guy, but crazy fun. Crazy. Whoa.
Yeah, and you get those two together with Merneke.
Oh, and Merneke never did anything.
Yeah, he did. He used to steal our lunch all the time.
Yeah,
Well,
steal your lunch. But
We go out and go to work, and Merneke would stay in the depot, and Rick Bacon and I'd go out and go to work, and we'd come in for lunch, and our lunches are gone. So he'd give us each $10. He said, "Just go down to the Far West and have a steak sandwich." So that's what we'd do. But he'd eat our lunch almost every day.
yeah, he was the first guy that conductor thing, that they're God. I caught his job in Guadalupe. It was Negretti was the other brakeman, and I didn't know anybody or anything. And Don just stayed in the shanty, stayed in the locker room, didn't leave, and just, oh, okay, so we do all the work. Because down south, Switchman, the foreman, is out there with the switch list, and he's guiding things, and you're doing this, and he's giving signals and all that stuff. No, not. And I go, really?
I think you found that more up here than you did down in LA where we came from.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Because even on the PE locals, the conductor was always out there.
Yeah.
And up here, there were a lot of conductors on the locals that you never saw them. Except if you went in to sit down in the caboose to take a break, you'd see him, sit down and talk to him. And that was about it.
Yep, but they were gods.
Yeah, they were characters.
Yeah.
I think there's more characters here per capita than there was in L.A., actually.
I ran across guys all across the system, you know, but they were nicer up here.
Yeah, they were. They were nicer up here.
Well, who couldn't be nice in San Luis? It's what's the happiest place on earth or something like that.
Exactly.
And it showed, and you know, you just you took care of each other. That's how it was. You just took care of each other.
You belong to the museum?
I do not.
Why?
Oh, why? I don't know. I don't like these people. How do I know? I never knew that you could join.
Be careful, it'll make you an honorary
Exactly.
member. You won't have a choice. in
Verlon,
that.
No,
yeah,
he
Verlon
needs to join.
Oh, see, here's Virlon now. Yeah, he's a part of every railroad organization known to mankind.
No, I'm not.
And you know,
But I do belong here.
well, aren't we special? He
Well,
is-
you need to too.
Well, I've always said when I grow up, I want to be just like him.
Well, you'll never make it.
I won't.
So,
Switchman.
Switchman.
Yeah,
Red legs.
us and monkeys.
Well, that might be a good spot to terminate.
Okay.
Hey, that was fun. Thanks.
Thank you so
I
much.
just got my low memory warning, so that's a perfect stop.
Okay, good enough.
Yeah.
That was fun.
Well, great.
I wish we could have told you more about this area, but
We'll get you back.
there was more happenings in Los Angeles than there were
Oh
up
yeah.
here.
Oh yeah.
And I don't know, just different things happened down in L.A. I can tell you one quick story. I had been on the railroad not a week. Like I say, I worked at Saugus Local, and I went over to the PE, and I caught a job out of Butte Street, and it was called the Huntington Beach Switcher.
Butte Street was down in the
25th
Vernon area.
25th and Alameda.
Not far from Watts.
Yeah, quite a ways from Watts. It was almost in downtown L.A., 25th. It's J-Yard today.
Right.
You guys have heard of J-Yard, haven't you?
It's about in the middle between L.A. and here and then Watts.
It's 25th and Alameda.
I'm a Bay Area kid, so.
Okay.
Oh.
Giant fan.
Yeah, that's, oh gosh. Anyway, we go all the way to Long Beach, or Huntington Beach on that job, and we got down to the base at Seal Beach. It's a weapons, naval weapons station. And it's all closed up now. They don't have anything in there. They got some rail left, not much. But anyway, we had to shove some cars in there, and we couldn't do any spotting, but we could switch our train out and line it up in there. Well, I'd been on the railroad like 3 days on pay, and I had this conductor by the name of Felix Girard. He hired out in I believe it was 1918.
Yeah.
And the guy that was his brakeman, his rear brakeman, was a guy named Chapman. And he'd hired out in about 1923.
Wow.
And these guys were on the best job the PE had, and that was this Huntington Beach job. And so we're in the base, and we're lining up our train. I have no idea what they're doing. I have not been here long enough. And Felix went in the caboose to do some paperwork, and Chapman and I are out there switching back and forth, and I had to keep looking at him to see which switch he wanted me to line. Finally, he just blows up and he starts yelling and screaming at me. Now, this is the kind of guys the PE were. When Felix Girard heard him scream, and he come out in the back porch of the caboose, he says, "What's up, Chappie?" He says, "Oh, this dumb son of a gun, he just doesn't know anything." And Felix said, "Well, you know, Chappie, he just hired out. He's been here a maximum, a week? And it's what you need to do is teach him instead of yelling at him. Because if you teach him, next week when I go on vacation and he comes down here as your brakeman, because you'll get set up as conductor, he might know a little bit. But that's the way most of the PE guys were. They put you under their arm just like that, and they take care of you.
Yeah.
They teach you how to switch. They would teach you what you had to do, what you had to know. And all in all, the guys up here were kind of like that too.
They were guys
See,
in LA.
there was a lot of main line work up here, and there's not a whole lot they can teach you about the main line. You basically get on and go.
LA wasn't like that. There's only a handful of guys like that. One of them is my mentor.
Well, that was Switchman, though.
Exactly.
Yeah,
But
most of the PE guys
the
were
Harbor
like
Beltline, we had PE guys. And my story for the Harbor Beltline, we'd go from from Wilmington to San Pedro. I should have told this. And we were switching out an industry, and the foreman, I'm 19, young and stupid, don't know nothing. And the foreman lets a car go too fast. And there's only about 50, 60 yards to the harbor, to the ocean. And he just looks at me and goes, "Grab it, kid, and stop it before it hits the water." And I go, "Okay." And I was hoping the brake worked, and I did. I stopped it right before it got to the end. And I'm young enough. Okay, I'll go into the water with this thing, because sure, coach. Okay, let's do this. You're young and stupid, and it was fun because you're, at 19, I'm immortal, and and give you a string of cars, 20 cars to take into the yard and tie down, and you had to jump from top, boxcar to boxcar. Okay, give me that one. Crazy fun.
We used to have to jump across those as we're moving.
As they're moving, that's what I had to do.
Because if we're shoving around curves and stuff like this, we'd have to jump back and forth to keep that guy in sight that was on top of the car, and the engineer.
Right.
And
and I'd have to jump to hit the brake. I'd have to get
jump up there
the
tie
point
brake,
but I couldn't stop it. I had to slow it down. So I'm jumping from car to car to tighten a little more, and then when I take it to a nice stop, it's a clear alley. You don't want to go out. If I would have gone down through the lower end of Sea Yard over the bridge,
you're going out in the main line.
Out in the main line, or into L.A.
Yeah.
No way. Okay, give it to me. I'm stupid.
You got to remember, him and I are pretty old, so stories they're buried pretty deep, and they don't come up too easy anymore.
Yeah. I'm 67, but mentally I'm still 12.
Yeah,
so
I agree with that.
He does, but fun. It went by 67. I don't feel 67 in the sense that
I'm the same age.
Yeah, it went by so fast. And then with 2 careers, with the railroad and then with the ministry, it's boom. In the ministry, I could tell you all kinds of stuff, but it just here we are.
Well, I just found out 3 months ago I'm not 35.
You're not. Did you? Was that a shock?
Yeah.
Did they? Gee, I'm sorry, Virlon. Yeah. Well, I just caught up to my IQ. I turned 67, so it's good.
Well, I have a confession. Today is my birthday.
Oh, happy birthday.
I'm 64 now, thank you.
Oh, good for you. Oh, you got another year for Medicare, though.
This was a great way to celebrate.
Okay.
Good for you. Good for you.
Yeah, we love each other. We mess
Well,
with
we
each
do.
other.
We've known each other for quite a few years.
And we mess with each other. We're too easy. And so
Yeah.
we could take the show on the road.
Yeah,
That's why when you said you want to, and I said,
I want to hear
got to
some
bring
of those
Virlon.
Saturday Night Live.
Oh,
voices.
my
You-
God.
Oh, Saturday Night Live. 2 wild and crazy guys.
No, I would do the Billy Crystal character. I'd see Pete, and I
You would
go,
look marvelous.
yo, Pete, you do, you're a little
He still does. When we go to the breakfast in the morning on the first Monday of every month.
You're a little marvelous. And so
Yeah.
and Pete did this old thing from Hogan's Heroes, you will not, and he does it perfectly, like this really mean Nazi guy. And exactly, but mean. So I'm shoving in, I go 30 cars to hook. You do, you're a little marvelous, you do. And he goes, well, Mr. Barry, how far are we going now? And he do and I go 15, and you do, honestly, you're a little marvelous.
And the funny thing is, like I say, they still do it.
Yeah, we do, yeah. And and Giles thought funny, real funny.
Don't do it.
But you're violating just a few rules here. Yeah.
My career was in law enforcement.
Oh.
Midnight shift.
Okay.
Yeah.
The voice from God, sometimes
Exactly.
somebody be monitoring it.
Yeah.
County communications. It was like
We were down in L.A. one time, and so you hear the radio from all over, miles around. and some guy goes on the radio and he goes, I'm as drunk as a skunk. And
Somebody say, the train man say, who is that?
I said, ain't that drunk? Ain't that drunk?
That happened quite a lot.
Oh, God. I ain't that drunk. Oh, yeah.
You got either one of you guys do long train orders? No. God, I'm surprised every fan in the world does that. 36 bucks a year. It's a site discussion site, but it's a near site. I mean, there's a lot of railroaders, a lot of them on there. Yeah, boy, some of the stories here and there. And I can sit and remember stories. Somebody mentioned something. Did you ever know Al wrote a banana for his kid?
Everybody had it.
Yeah.
He gave me legs. He's coming to the yard. And we're both cut off in Los Nieves. So I hadn't seen him in a while. Now this is in Los Nieves where when you're on the radio, like basic music. He sees me, and he's on the main line. I'm switching, and he goes, "Hey, Legs!" Everybody and their mother knew Legs was, and it stuck. And it stuck.
Well, Banana Nose Broda, the last time I saw him, he was coming up here from L.A. And this is when I lived here before, prior to going to Bakersfield. And I took him home for dinner, and my wife remembered him. But the story back year, and in fact, I tell you what, I'd only been working, I guess about 2 or 3 months, 4 months, something like that. And I was on a PE job. I caught a PE job at Anaheim. The engineer and the other brakeman were PE, and they didn't have a conductor on the PE extra board, so they called this Al Broda off the SP board to protect the job. So, and I just told this story on train orders the other day. Kathy and I had only been married a while. I didn't have 2 nickels to go like this with.
And she's sweet. What she sees in this man, I don't know. She's really a nice person.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
But anyway.
And she's cute. I don't know what happened. Was she blind when she married him?
No.
I don't know.
Anyway,
Just saying.
she made me a butter sandwich. We had 2 pieces of bread and a thermos of instant coffee. And that's what I went to lunch on for 16 hours. So we're on duty about 7.5 hours, and I've already eaten half a sandwich and drank most of the coffee. I think I have like a half a cup of coffee left. So the engineer says, we're going to go eat. And I said, okay, I'm going to stay here and finish my lunch. So Al knew we had only been married a while. So I get this butter sandwich out, what's left of it, and I pour out that half a cup of coffee. And Al comes up on the engine. He says, come on, we're going to go eat. And I said, I've got my lunch here. And he looks at me and says, a butter sandwich? And I said, well, yeah, I like them.
Yeah.
That's all I had. That's all I could afford at the time.
Yeah.
So anyway, he said, we're going to be out here about another 8 hours. He says, you got to go get something in your stomach. I said, no, don't worry about it, Al. I got this. He says, you got any money? I said, yeah, I got money. So he grabs me right here and he pulls me up off my seat in the engine, and he reaches in, he tries to grab my wallet, and I'm fighting him off. When he gets the wallet, when he opens it up, the moths just fly out.
They still do.
And they still do. Yeah, they do, because all I got is my debit card. But anyway, he says, come on, we're going to go eat. So I said, no. I finally went with him, and he bought my dinner. Well, on the way back, I noticed, I was walking with Al, and I noticed he kept going a little slower and a little slower. He let the crew get up quite a ways ahead of him. He pulls out his wallet, and he peels off 5 20s.
Wow.
He says, here.
That's a lot back
He says,
then.
do not pay me back until you've got $100. He says, I don't want 10 here and 5 there. You give me $100. I says, okay. It took me almost a year, but Kathy and I saved $100. I went to the bank and I got a brand new, crisp $100 bill.
Wow.
And I took it to his house, and I was proud as hell to give it to him. But I'll tell you what, that was a lifelong friend.
Heck yeah.
What that man did for me when I was down.
Stuff like that.
Yeah.
Harbor Beltline again. I'm living in Inglewood, and I'm 19. That's when I went through.
You're sure 19 a lot.
Mentally there, and maybe I was 20. And so I back in those days, no money, footloose, fancy free, and I had a car a month club. I'd buy a car for $50 or $100 and it'd blow up. And so one day I'm driving Harbor Beltline in the morning, had a great job, and car blows up. I call Stanton.
Yeah.
Stanton was the
R.D.
train
Stanton.
master, nicest guy in the world.
Rudolph.
And I called him, and I said, guys, I'm going to have to lay off. I'm sorry, my car blew up. And he answered, he goes, this was the train master. And he goes, where are you at? I was about 20 miles away. And he goes, no problem, I'll come get you. Okay. Comes and gets my car situated, takes it to a garage, takes me out to breakfast. And then he said, don't worry, I got the crew going. We'll catch up to him. And that's the kind of guy, when he retired, I mean, he got more stuff. Guys would, he was the type of supervisor where you'd go, oh, if they called you, can you stay a little extra and do something and don't put it on the whatever, and because we sent somebody home to her, oh, for Stanton, they'll do anything.
And let me tell you one more thing about Stanton.
You know?
He was a PE conductor, and so was his son. They were both PE guys.
Mm.
But that was the mentality of them PE guys. Do stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then they had you. You do anything for these guys.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Anything.
Yeah, you scratch my back, and boy, they'd scratch yours in no end.
Yeah.
They were good to work for, these guys.
Yeah, they were. They were fun.